Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's broadcast of the Marin Symphony. I'm delighted to welcome as my guest today one of my oldest friends and colleagues in the orchestra, bass player Andy Butler. Hey, Andy, how are you?
Hey, Alasdair, I'm great. Thank you. It's great to be here with you, and pretty optimistic day all around. Lots of things to feel good about today.
Happy to see you as always. And it just occurred to me that I think you and I have known each other for more than 30 years now, which is quite an impressive amount of time. Would you like to share with people how we first appeared on the same stage together, if you remember yourself, that is?
Yeah, of course. I mean, our paths have crossed and interlaced in so many great ways. We first met with the San Francisco Youth Orchestra when you were the conductor. I believe that would have been 1987.
Actually, it started in 1989, and this is my memory, of course, going back in, and you feel free to contradict me, but I think you had already left the orchestra, but we needed to hire you back as a ringer because we simply didn't have enough actual basses at the youth orchestra age. So you were a regular guest when I started the orchestra in 1989.
Yeah, so I must have finished in 1986 with David Milnes, who was your predecessor. And then I went off to Oberlin for 3 years and came back. And sure enough, I was doing my master's at San Francisco Conservatory. And that's when got the call to join you, which was fantastic. And that was the first time we were together on stage.
Right. And so that continued for a few years until we actually didn't need your services anymore because the orchestra had expanded appropriately. And then next up, I'm guessing next up, Sun Valley. Is that right?
Yeah. So I was part of the crew that lobbied on your behalf. Of course, I knew you very well by then. And after a not so successful conductor search, we decided we should have Alasdair, and then that was it. It was a done deal. So that was wonderful that that you were available and willing to join us up there. So that was I think our first formal job together. And then I joined the Marin Symphony in 2010. So,
right. Yeah. But you must have subbed with, I'm sure I just remember seeing you all on the stage many times before that as well. So I'm sure you were subbing with us on a regular basis, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've been freelancing in the Bay Area pretty much since grad school, which would have been 1990, and kind of building a stable of regional orchestras to sort of help keep me going. And I had been subbing with Marin quite a bit. So we'd been seeing each other. And I think there was also other opportunities. We saw each other maybe with the youth orchestra, or you might have been doing a San Francisco Symphony education concert, something like that. So
anyway, bottom line is we've known each other forever and ever. And that's just great. Tell us about your own story with the bass. How did you come to play the instrument?
Well, it's interesting. I grew up in a family with music, which I think most of my colleagues would say there was, it may not have been professional musicians. My dad was a trumpet player. My mom was a creative children's dance teacher. But my dad was also an architect engineer. That was sort of his bread and butter. But he was a really wonderful trumpet player and a great dad. He passed away about 7 years ago, and I miss him, of course, around the holidays especially. But he was a trumpet player, so I grew up playing piano and trumpet and recorder. And then in middle school, I finally found my way to the electric bass and eventually to the upright bass.
Well, so I'm just realizing you've got all food groups covered there. You said piano, recorder, trumpet, and ultimately bass, right? So
yeah, it worked out good for the family band that I became the bass player, because we also had a neighbor who was a keyboard player. So we sort of had instant music at any time of the day, and it was really nice. Later, when my dad, he worked for Lockheed for many, many years, and he got burned out on that because of the government contracts and all of the sort of secrecy associated with what Lockheed was doing at that time. And he went into construction. So he started his own business. He would design people's, extensions or houses or whatever they needed, and then he would build them. But he was always coming and going from the house, which was great because he would come in and we would just, play a couple tunes together, and then he'd go off to the next job. So it was nice how music sort of intersected throughout the day, because he had that kind of a job. So I was really fortunate to have that.
Is there one moment that you can point to when you were growing up that you decided I have to be a musician, or is it a more gradual evolution? I find people tend to fall into one or other camp.
Well, there were sort of two pivotal moments. I think the first one was when I started to play electric bass, which inevitably led me to the upright bass. And by then, I think junior or senior year in high school, I was already so in love with music and playing music, and I couldn't imagine really doing anything else. And I think that's the sort of hunger that drives a person to take on a career as a musician, which is quite an undertaking, especially these days. And then the next pivotal moment was really with the San Francisco Youth Orchestra, where I came in sort of at the last minute to join in 1985. And I hadn't played in a really good orchestra before. And we played the Beethoven Five, and that really set me on the course of wanting to pursue a career in classical music, because there was two things: the sound in the hall, the power of the orchestra, and just the level of musicianship where everybody could sit down and read a symphony and it sounded great immediately. And that was really, that sold me on going into classical music.
I have a similar, I think a similar moment, and it was mostly realizing being part of an ensemble that was so much better than I was at the time, and realizing that I was being, the rising tide was lifting my boat with everybody else. It sounds like that's kind of the same thing with you with San Francisco Symphony Youth Orchestra.
Yeah, I mean, it was really amazing. At the time, I was doing a lot more big band, jazz. I was playing in a top 40 band. I mean, I was sort of all over the map as far as what direction my career was going. But, those first notes in Davies Hall, it just, that was it. It was really an aha moment for me. And then I went to Oberlin and pursued a degree in music ed, as well as a performance degree, and then the master's at the San Francisco Conservatory. And after that, it's just been lots of auditions. I've arrived at a place where I'm in 7 regional orchestras and 1 opera company. So I had a lot of work prior to the pandemic, and I'm hoping to be doing a lot of work again when things start to settle down.
So you really are living La Vida Freeway Philharmonica.
Yeah. I mean, my father.
How many hours a week do you spend in your car under normal circumstances?
It's been so long, I don't really remember, but I notice a difference in how my body feels not being in the car that much, and it actually feels a lot better. The pandemic's given me a lot of time to walk and be outside and not be on the freeway, which I think it's one of those silver linings.
Surely must reduce the stress level.
Yeah.
So how many concerts a month have you generally given in the past?
Well, I would usually be working every weekend, and between all the different orchestras and then subbing with various groups, which was wonderful. And then rehearsing, usually probably Tuesday through Friday most of the time. And then I do a lot of teaching during the daytime. I know you had an interview with Beth Vandervenet recently, and she told you all about the Oakland Symphony Muse program, which sends members out into the schools, and I'm a big part of that as well. So I've sort of have the daytime life, which involves lots of education, and then usually rehearsals in the evening and concerts on the weekend. So it's been a really wonderful and full life as a musician.
And it will continue to be so once
it will continue.
And we're all looking forward to that. In the meantime, are there certain projects, musical or non-musical, that have interested you? How are you spending your time in general?
The first couple months of quarantine were just sort of shock. And what I started to explore was ways of presenting a video or some type of videography that involved playing the bass in more of a solo capacity. I've been doing a program for the California Symphony, which is called Double Bass Dimensions, in which I talk a little bit about the bass, answer some common questions that people always ask, like, why don't you play the flute? How do you move that thing around? The silly questions that everybody says. And then I explore some of the really traditional solo repertoire, but performed on the bass, like Camille Saint-Saëns' The Swan, the Thais Meditation, box air on the G string, stuff that people know and recognize, but isn't ordinarily heard on the bass. So I spent a lot of time working on that project, and it's sort of an ongoing project. I wanted to be able to share some of that with you today, but unfortunately, because the California Symphony hasn't released any of these episodes yet,
fair enough.
You can understand I'm waiting on that. But that really took a good 3 months of learning how to maneuver and record and write scripts and just sort of imagine what would be interesting for people to listen to that had to do with the bass and had to do with me playing the bass. So that was good. That ate up about 3 months and sort of kept me busy. And more recently, Santa Rosa has started to perform again, which has been great. We've been doing concerts at the Green Music Center. I did a Beethoven lecture for the Sacramento Philharmonic, which was really a great learning experience. I'd never done any type of an educational lecture about a composer. And just studying Beethoven, of course, it was his 250th birthday. Lots of orchestras are doing things around Beethoven at this time. But just kind of immersing myself in the life of Beethoven and what he was going through and comparing it with what we're going through, it was amazing. There were so many parallels. Just the sort of need to survive, sick family members, death from various things, trying to make a living as a musician. And that was really wonderful to sort of just get a chance to do that. And it was actually modeled a lot in this format where the operations engineer talked and we just did it conversationally, and it was really, really nice to get to do that. And I showed him some of your interviews. I think of you as the Nora O'Donnell of orchestra interviews at this point.
Well, thank you so much. Big fan of that. Yeah.
The way that you've been doing these programs has really been great, and I think informal, and people enjoy watching it. And I've been sharing it and getting to know all my musicians in the Marin Symphony and the other aspects of people that you wouldn't ordinarily know about has really been fascinating to see. And I'm really glad you're doing this series. And I hope you'll continue to do it in some type of capacity, even when we're playing it again, just because people will come up to the stage now and be like, wow, I saw this or I saw that. And I had no idea you were a marine biologist on the side. And
yeah, this is the classic example, I think, of making lemonade out of lemons. We can't be in the concert hall together. What is a way of connecting all of us as a musical family, whether it's on stage or in the audience or any other way? And I know in general, and in some cases specifically, the better I know people in the orchestra, that as a rule, people lead very interesting and varied lives. And so I'm privy to some of that information, but I don't think most of the people in the audience are. So it's just been lovely to be able to share the stage metaphorically with you and my other colleagues to illuminate some of the richness of the tapestry of the lives that you're all leading. So you mentioned some of the musical projects. Any fun non-musically related things that you're doing to pass the time?
I think probably the funnest thing has just been cooking with the family. People have been home. My daughter's here, and that's another intersection that you and I have, of course, is the town of New Haven, which, I feel that we sort of established the base camp first there, and then you got the job in the orchestra. So
that's right. You planted the flag with your daughter being an undergraduate there. I think just before I started, around about the same time that I started.
Yeah. So that's been another wonderful connection, and she's been going back and forth, but she's been home, and she just loves to cook in a really creative way. And I've been enjoying cooking and having everybody together at home, although stressful at times, has been really, really nice. And I think a lot of families would reiterate the same thing. I've had a lot of students tell me, I never knew about my mom growing up in China playing ping pong, and all these connections parents and kids are getting because they're just locked up together has been really interesting. And, I'm expressing the positive ones, but I've heard more positive than negative, actually, which has really been nice.
So when you're cooking, are you cooking as a team, or is it one person gets to do the meal and nobody else gets to step foot in the kitchen? Or
no, I think we're definitely a team. It's sort of like those reality TV shows where you have one person commanding and everybody else is chopping and hustling, or maybe running to the store for a last minute ingredient. And So that's been really, really fun and exciting. I'm not really a book cooker. I tend to cook more on instinct. Amanda likes to look up a fancy recipe and follow it, but then adjust
That
it. We have different
that
styles,
Yeah,
and
that it was that's so interesting because my husband Lowell, who's as you know, is also he's a fabulous cook, but he just never looks at recipes at all. He just eyes what's in the refrigerator and says, "Okay, I'll do this, I'll do this," and I'm like, the kitchen looks like a set of a TV show because it's just like strewn with ramekins and other little bowls because everything has to be exactly chopped up in advance and put all together because otherwise it must be the conductor in me. I feel like I have to have all of the constituent parts ready to go, and then I can deploy them at the moment. Because or maybe it's the classical music nerd in me and not the jazzer, because I can't improvise, and I admire those that can. Can
and
you
do you get
improvise?
in do you get in there with the skillet and the heat and the oil? I mean, do you do the cooking?
Well, occasionally, I can say, oh yeah, sure, I did last night, but actually that was the first time I cooked anything in a long while because Lowell finds it very therapeutic. But I mean, I do because part of the time when I'm in New Haven, I'm on my own, and so I've kind of gotten my I use the word loosely, but my cooking chops back a little bit when I've been in New Haven, but less so. So I spent most of the time here in California. So yeah, it's mostly been Lowell, not me. Anyway.
Maybe we can set something up where Amanda will come and cook for you at your apartment when you're in New Haven, sort of an informal cooking get together.
That's true. We can have and vice versa. Although I don't, does she cook and she's in her dorm, right? So
Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, though, she's so busy that she barely has time to eat the food that the cafeteria prepares. Those
I
poor
thought
kids, but at least she's been there for a fair amount of this year, which is great for her. We miss her when she goes back, but uh, being locked up at home and being a junior in college is not the best experience.
no, indeed. But I'm sure she, and like everybody else, is making the best of it as possible. So but hey, it's so nice to catch up with you, my friend. It's been too long, and I know we'll see each other soon. But it's been wonderful to talk to you, to get to know a little bit more about you and the life that you've has brought you to this point, as well as our intersections between the two of us over the years.
Thank you. I hope we see each other soon and on stage. I'm really looking forward to things in Marin and hopefully some time together in Idaho as well.
I would love that. Take care of yourself in the meantime, and thanks for being here today.
You too. Great to see you, Alasdair.
You too, Andy. Bye.
Bye.